Tom and Greg in Succession are so funny.
Like their whole dynamic.
Do you believe in vaccines are causing autism? I mean, I've beaten this question to death, but like everyone daydreams, blah, blah, blah. You know, how can you decipher whether someone should be on Adderall or not? Hello, I'm Andrew Hells. Welcome to another edition of Chatting With. Today I'm here with Mady Snyder. She's a family therapist. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. I'm looking forward to talking today. Chatting
Chalking.
a little bit with you. Chatting and talking with you at the same time.
So you're in LA. You had work today?
Yeah, I had work today. I just got off, with clients.
Is it mostly
saving
online?
lives and just like doing what I do. I'm online. I'm online one day a week, so Wednesdays, and then the rest of the time I have an in-person office.
Okay.
So, yeah, a little bit of both, and I would say probably 50-50.
How long you been doing that?
Oh, okay. I've been doing that since, this is like a hard question to answer. So I used to work I used to work with kids. I've been doing that since like 2017, and then I shifted into like MFT, more of that role in like 2020. So MFT. I'm like newer to the field. And MFT is marriage and family therapist, which is what my license is.
All right.
Yeah.
So you got your bachelor's and you had to go to like a little bit more schooling?
Yep, bachelor's, and then you have to do my program was 2 years of schooling, and that's full time. So it's very difficult to work. You can do it, but it's hard. And then you have to work at an internship in which you're not paid, but you're doing therapy for people. But you aren't getting paid for it for like a year, and then you can start making money. So yeah, it's not like the most financially easy course to take.
How did you support yourself then if it was full time?
I nannied. So I was like a nanny for a little bit when I first moved here, and just found a family and they worked for them. And I worked before with autistic kids. So he was nonverbal, and I'd just hang out for him for 5 hours a day and like not talk to anyone for 5 hours and get done and be like, wow, I need to talk to people. So I did that.
Cool.
Yeah,
that seems like a job you could like do your homework while you're doing it.
Yeah, I would like listen to podcasts sometimes if he was doing stuff, or it was like outside of school hours. So that was the main thing.
Cool.
So yeah, go to school during the week, work on the weekends. But luckily, no more weekend working now. A lot of work to get to this place, but it's nice once you do.
What was like the biggest shock, I guess, your first day as like a real, as a non-student,
Yeah. So my first like setting I worked in, where it was like, so I did like how many months of schooling? 8 months, and then they're just like, all right, you're gonna be doing therapy now, which is kind of like wild. So the first setting I worked in was like a little bit more intense. It was Department of Mental Health, and I know there was for sure things that were like shocking that I probably blocked from my memory.
So that's like mental health, like it's just people coming in and it's like they're laying on the couch. Like, are you technically a psychiatrist?
Oh yeah, no, they're not laying on the couch usually. That's like one of the things I hear a lot though. But this is like the county. And so you're like in people's homes all of a sudden, and like things are happening around you, and they're like, do you want to come to dinner now? And you're like, I'm actually your therapist. And then sometimes you're in the office. So there's like all these different versions of being a therapist, and one of which would be like, yeah, you're in people's homes and you're doing therapy there.
Okay.
And usually kids at that, the in-home stuff, but sometimes adults too.
So like walk me through like some fundamental exercises that you do with most people that you're just doing over and over again with people.
Okay, well, I don't know if I have like fundamental exercises I do. I would say like even how I'm like pretty conversational, relational as a therapist. So how I am now is kind of how I try to be with clients. I feel like the exercise stuff comes through when it's like someone's having a panic attack right now, right? So that's when you do deep breathing exercises. Or are you familiar with any of like stuff you do for panic attacks?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You just,
that could be a loaded question, I guess.
Seconds.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
well, that's all I know really. Is like you breathe in for 5 seconds and slow for 5 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah. There's like box breathing. There's like look around you. What's 5 things you can touch? 4 things you can see.
Right.
3 things you can smell. So there's like those kinds of exercises. And then a lot of it is like people coming in and they sit down and we talk for a bit. And then sometimes it's like more conversational at first, like, I don't know, whatever beverage they're drinking or TV show they're watching. And then we kind of get into it. And then they leave and they're like crying. And you're like, all right, cool. On to the next one.
Do they usually leave crying?
Sometimes. Hopefully not. But there are times where like right at the end you get into something deep and then you're like, okay, we have to go now. And that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I guess it's usually a good thing if they're crying, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, sometimes people get mad. They're like, oh, now I'm crying and now I have to go to the rest of my job. And like, that's also kind of funny to me sometimes because I'm not like causing the crying. I just try to like create a space where people can like talk about things that are difficult.
Okay. Are you able to prescribe medication?
I don't. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's just psychiatrists. Some psychiatrists do some therapy as well, but usually like psychiatrists prescribe and then therapists do the therapy, and there's like a master's level therapist and then also a doctoral level therapist. So yeah, that's kind of how things break down.
Are you trying to get a master's or are you trying to get more down the academic?
More schooling?
Yeah.
No,
I don't know why that was hard to ask.
Are you trying to do more?
Gosh. So, or are you good? Are you like fine now? No more school.
I always thought I wanted to do a doctoral degree because that's like it gives you the most options, and I'm all about like I like to have options because then people can't like tell me what I can and can't do. Just, a little peek behind the curtain there. So I always thought I would do a doctoral degree, but I've pretty much been able to do everything I want to do with a master's degree. There's not like a whole lot more I would be able to do. Like I've been able to do research. I've been able to like be an adjunct professor. So for me, there's really like no reason I would want to go back other than like what I call like your what do I call it? Basically your bureaucratic doctorate where you're getting it just to put the 3 letters after your name so people respect you.
Status.
Yeah, exactly. Status doctorate. Yeah.
Right.
That would be like really the only thing because there is like a lot of gatekeeping, but yeah.
Like bragging rights, yeah.
Yeah, bragging rights doctorate, which seems like a silly reason to like pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, but
no, it's human nature.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see. Marriage. Do you do premarital counseling?
I do. Yeah. So I don't get as many people coming just for that. Usually the couples I see are like deep in it. I like always tell people like go to
like about
counseling.
To get divorced, you mean?
Yeah, like they're like really like we've been together for 10 years. We've been like fighting in this exact way for a long time. I always tell people like just go to therapy. Like don't wait till you're in crisis because then there's like so much more work you're having to do to get out of it. So there are people who specialize more in like premarital counseling, but I work with people kind of at all stages of their relationship.
Yeah. Carly and I, we're engaged now, and we'll probably do some premarital counseling. Thank you. Because you can get like a 40% discount on the license fee or something. Yeah. It's also just a good idea too.
Discounted therapy. All right. Yeah. If you need Rex, I can send them your way.
Cool.
But yeah, I think it's a good idea just to like go at some point. Have you been to therapy ever before?
No, not where I'm just like talking to someone. It's only been like a psychiatrist who's like, here's some medication. Yeah.
Yeah, so. Like here, now give me your money and take your Adderall or whatever.
It's a glorified drug deal. That's what.
Yeah.
But
cool. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to. I was like, am I allowed to ask you questions? So I just did it. But okay, cool.
Let's see. So are you married now? What's your story?
Are you asking me if I'm single after you just said you're engaged? But also,
I don't know. Well, I mean, like, I guess.
Okay, cool.
When clients are like, I wonder because it's so relationship advice, marriage advice, whatever. It's so subjective.
Yeah.
And case by case basis, I would feel like, is there pressure to get married so that you can say, yes, I'm married, I'm doing this, and I experienced these things myself or anything like that,
I totally get what you mean. I feel like when I started, I was single, and it felt like a little bit like an imposter because you're like recommending these things that you're like not trying for yourself.
Right.
And now I'm not single. I'm in a relationship now, and so I feel like that has given me a little bit more like experiential knowledge. But I also work with parents a lot, and I'm not a parent. And one of my
Okay.
colleagues was like, yeah, but I think you're good at it because you're actually like ignorant enough to believe any of that stuff could work. And like once you're a parent, you're like all of it goes out the window. So I think like, yeah, there's like this difference between having like your own experiential knowledge of something and then having like the textbook knowledge. And there's
Right.
times that I'm like talking more about my own self-disclosure, but a lot of times it's more like about my client than my experience.
Um,
Yeah.
is it emotionally draining? What's like the most difficult part of your job?
Yes, definitely most emotionally draining for sure.
I mean, like do you get burned out like oh, I can't do this anymore or anything like that?
Yeah, I think it goes in like cycles. Like there's like moments of that. Like I know I'm like having a hard time if it's like the 5 minutes before my session. I'm like I just can't do this. And then as soon as
Yeah.
I like get on and I'm meeting with people, I feel like it's a lot like better. It's kind of like that dread before you know that you're going to be excited about the thing once you're doing it, but it's like the leading up to it that's the hard part. So that's usually when I know I kind of got to like slow things down. And it's about, I think for me, it's about figuring out the things that like fill me back up, which are like, where are the places where I don't have to like be the therapist, or I can just kind of be myself and say off the wall things. And I'm pretty unfiltered in my friendships. And, and so, yeah, I try to just like say whatever and not really like think much about what comes out of my mouth until afterwards, and then I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, it's about finding spaces where I can just like be more of myself outside of like being a therapist. And I try to like be myself as a therapist too, but there's always like a layer of like this is a professional relationship at the end of the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
But
how
yeah, a
many how
draining.
many yeah, I mean, how many what are we talking here? How many like sessions do you have a day with people?
Yeah, so I see clients, I see like 5 clients a day, 4 or 5 days a week, usually 4. So it's
Wow.
like 20, which is like another misconception about like therapy. It's not like a 40-hour work week job, as in like you're getting paid 40 hours a week for seeing 40 clients, because that's just not sustainable at all.
Yeah.
For me, I've found around 20 is like a sweet spot where like able to pay all my bills and I'm not getting burnt out. But it's like constant mental calculations of like how many more people do I need to have in my practice? What's sustainable for me, and how much money do I need to make? And yeah, you can really only see like directly so many clients in a week.
How many more people in your practice? You mean
Oh, like how many more
it,
clients do I need to be having, right?
okay, okay,
Like
yeah.
if I want to make this much money, then I need to have like 20 clients. And yeah, you're just like constant. And I work for myself too, so that's part of it, is like I'm also doing all the administrative things it takes to like run a business.
Okay. You mean like
Yeah.
are you like so it's freelance?
It's like, yeah, like you could call it freelance. That would be the equivalent. It's like what we would call, or like some people call it owning your own private practice, is like the more maybe official way. So like I own my own private practice. It's a
Okay.
corporation, but it's literally just me. Because
Okay.
there's like all these weird ways you have to set up your business. But yeah, I'm essentially just like my own boss now. So that means I also
Oh,
have to do the admin stuff.
right. Have you ever
Yeah.
thought of just hiring a secretary or anything like that or
Yeah, I actually have, just because there's so many like things where you're like, just email this person. And I mean, I don't know about you, but like when my emails pile up, I have like, I lose all my motivation to
yeah,
respond to
same. No,
anything,
it
even if
gets
they're like
so
super important.
even if it's the most simple
Yeah.
task on a computer, I get it gets so tedious in my head when
Yeah.
it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
Uh,
so I think I mentioned I work with like a lot of ADHD and autistic people. That's like an ADHD type trait that they talk about a lot, where it's like, oh, I just put something off for an entire year that took me 5 minutes to do, which I like have
yeah.
totally done as well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely me. I mean, I've beaten this question to death, but like everyone daydreams, blah blah blah. You know, how can you decipher whether someone should be on Adderall or not?
Yeah, I don't even know if like ADHD, not all ADHD people even need Adderall, you know? It's like
Okay.
so contingent person to person.
Yeah. it's just kind of it's just like a personal choice to them, or pretty
Yeah,
much?
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think like if you're in therapy too, you're paying attention to like how do I feel as a person? What's it like to be in my body? Like, what are the times I feel energized during the day? When are the times I don't feel energized during the day? Am I working in the hours where I actually feel most productive, or am I first forcing myself to work 9 to 5? Like, there's so much within that to figure out before you even get to like medication.
Yeah, right, right. And like
Yeah.
the type of work that you're suited for and stuff like that.
Yeah. Which I mean, are you freelance? Is that like what's your
Yeah, I
gig?
guess that's that's the yeah, I'm a YouTuber. And yeah, freelance is definitely and then I mean, I'll do like DoorDash here and there, but um
Yeah. But it's like a
yeah, it's
lot to like
definitely
stay on top of, right? Like, and if you worked in contexts where it's like not felt good, you start to like, I think as you get older, you learn where you thrive and where you don't.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's this like constant love-hate relationship with Adderall, cuz it's like it'll help me get stuff done, but then it like turns me into this robot person, and so I'm like always balancing that out. Autism
Yeah.
would you say like 80% of your clients are autistic?
I would say so. Yeah. That's the majority of my practice. Or like when I say my practice, my client load, the people that I get pretty much at this point, everyone's seeking out therapy for like autism or ADHD. And then I have people I started with like, a few years ago who are not autistic or ADHD or other neurodivergent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you believe in vaccines are causing autism?
No, do you? To do a very therapist-y thing. I don't know. What do you think?
No. Tell me how you feel about that.
Yeah, exactly.
No, no, of course not. I mean, I think it's like, how would you shut down an anti-vaxxer?
I mean, I don't know. Like, one of the things that I have recently committed to is like, I'm not going to argue with people who are committed to not understanding me, right? Like, I'm not going to
Right.
put energy towards arguing with someone who just very clearly doesn't want to change their opinion. But essentially, yeah, there's like not a lot of evidence that suggests that vaccines cause autism. I think also the underlying belief there is that it's a bad thing to have autism, or that like autism should be like cured or fixed. And a
Right.
lot of like, if you listen to autistic people now, a lot of them are like, no, it's not problematic for me. It's problematic for other people because we don't live in a society that's set up for autistic people to like thrive. So, yeah, I feel like a lot of people, I think like the underlying assumption there is like that would be like a really terrible thing, right? If
Right,
like
right.
someone had autism.
So what kind of stuff do you talk about in the sessions with autistic people? Like, what do they talk to you about? What do they usually
Yeah.
come to you for?
I mean, a lot of times it's just like, I work with a lot of people who are late diagnosed. So they're like 30, 40, 50, and they just found out that they're autistic.
Wow,
And
so
then a lot of times,
maybe I'm autistic.
you might be, but if you're gonna be like emailing me after like 6 a.m. I've been up all night thinking about this.
No, well, I mean, I've been doing this for 12 years. People have commented that like
Really?
a bunch of times. And
I think you don't even need to go anywhere then. I think the internet just told you.
I mean, what's but I guess
I can,
yeah. Sorry, I
I
interrupted
can't wait for you to look. No, I just can't wait for you to look back on this interview in like 5 years and be like, "That's the moment I realized."
That's when I realized I'm autistic.
Yeah, but it's wild. I guess like I think that's why I was also excited to sit down with you. I've seen some of your other interviews, and I like that you just ask the questions that you're thinking,
Right.
because I think like a lot of people, yeah, don't realize that autism happens at like every age, and the people I work with are
Okay.
usually late diagnosed, so they're like going back through all of their memories and being like, oh, I'm not messed up. Like, I'm not like just an inherently problematic, like messed up person. Like I was struggling, or I didn't realize like what was happening for me, or like my nervous system was constantly overstimulated. No wonder I didn't do well in school, or no wonder it was hard to have friends. Like, I feel like a lot of people start to realize like I'm not a terrible person. There's not something wrong with me. There's just a lot of places where like that knowledge would have been really helpful.
Do they,
Yeah.
after learning they're autistic, do they usually get on medication or anything like that?
Some people might pursue medication because a lot of like late diagnosed autistic people have developed like depression or anxiety. A lot of them are more predisposed towards like developing PTSD. So usually it's like for some of the things that like co-occur or happen along with autism. But for a lot of people, I feel like it's just figuring out like how their brain works. Again, kind of like the ADHD stuff, like what are the contexts which they're going to do well? What are the contexts that are overwhelming? If they're in a relationship, how does it impact their relationship? It's a lot of like, those are kind of some of the topics that come up. Like work, family, stuff that comes up for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, give me an example of how you would help them. I mean, let's see, they're coming, they're like, yeah, I this and this and this. And then you say, well, okay, then you might have autism, and then what do you say? I don't know.
Yeah. Should we just like, you just come to me and we'll just like do it?
Sure.
You're like, let's say hypothetically they're like a YouTuber. Okay, so
I'm just getting a session from you secretly.
Yeah, for free. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of people, sometimes people come in and they're like, I think I might be autistic. I saw like a TikTok, right? And so usually it's like some people would like dismiss that right away. But usually I'll be like, okay, what resonated for you? Like what was helpful about that? And then it's kind of exploring like, is that actually something that we would attribute towards like an autism trait? Or is that just like, does it fall into another category? So it's kind of like we're trying to figure out like what are, and I have like lists of traits and like different tools that I use to assess for is this autism or not. But like once we break it down, there's like a lot of traits people don't know about with autism that explain a lot of people's experiences a little bit better than they thought. So usually it's like a lot of like education around what autism is, what it isn't, and how it impacts them.
I mean, in a lot of cases, it's not really worth knowing if you have autism or not. You might as well just like keep living your life the same,
Maybe.
I don't know.
I mean, I think for people, I think for some people it helps it be like, oh, this makes sense. And again, I feel like a lot of times I hear they're like, oh, I'm not like just like a person who's broken, or like they've been to therapy a lot and people haven't been able to like help them through depression or anxiety. So I don't know, for a lot of people who are late diagnosed, I feel like it helps something click within them. And then as they start to explore it more, then other people are like, oh yeah, that does seem like it fits for you. And it kind of like is the difference between like, someone can be an asshole and autistic, but also they've done studies that show like when people know someone's autistic, they're more likely to like not judge them as harshly or discriminate against them as much. So I think sometimes that's even helpful for people.
Do you go to therapy yourself?
I do, yeah. So that is I feel like a super important part of being a therapist is like also having your own therapy. And then sometimes in my sessions, I'll be like, you know what my therapist told me the other day? Because I don't know, sometimes it's like very relevant, or I don't know, I feel I have the need to be like hyper honest about things. Sometimes I like don't feel like I can just say something because I feel like I need to attribute it to the person I heard it to, which is ridiculous because they would never know, because it's not like my therapist is going to tell them.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I have found like my own therapy super helpful because like there's parts of your clients that, you can't talk about. Like when I get home, I can't talk about parts of my job. You're just like holding a lot of people's secrets and that's stuff that they haven't told anyone else.
Do you write down their secrets in a little book?
No, I don't. In a little book. But you are required to take notes, keep up, like what you did, what you're doing. You have to like catalog all of that.
How long you been going to therapy?
A long time. Probably since I was like, maybe like 19 or 20, like since I started college. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that kind of what sparked you to get into the profession yourself?
Well, no, it's more like, which you'll hear from a lot of therapists, like my own family and stuff going on with them. And I also grew up in a place where like we didn't have therapists in our town. Like you had to drive like an hour to go to therapy. And so I feel like I was aware of all of that at a young age and like kind of the gap. And I think when I got into it, I was like, I'm going to come back and like save my hometown and like open a therapy practice. And then I like got out and then I moved to LA and I was like, I think I'm just going to stay here.
Do you ever like criticize your own therapist? Like I would have said this or whatever.
Oh, for sure. It's like I must be like an awful client. I feel so bad just because like I have so many beliefs that I'm passionate about, like passionate about what it means to be a therapist. And like so much of the framework that I work within is like, how do you like accommodate therapy to meet the individual person's needs? How do you like recognize and like kind of focus on their strengths rather than like the areas like where other people would say they're deficient? Because I think a lot of growth and change can happen from like leaning into those strengths. So yeah, I think that I think because of like the way my brain works and because I'm constantly thinking about how to make things better, it can be really hard to be the client because sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't like that question, or I don't like the way that you like, I don't know, made an assumption about me or whatever. So then you have to decide, do I bring that up or do I just like not say anything?
Has it been the same therapist you've had for like 10 years, or have you
I had different ones. So I had like therapists in college, and I feel like I'm kind of so distant from it now that I don't remember. But I think it's scary to start therapy. I'm sure at the time it was like weird and like difficult and all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had like different therapists I've worked with over the years, and I found
how often? Is it like once a week?
Like every other week. I used to go once a week. There was a period of my life where I was going twice a week because I was having like a super hard time. I was like trying to do my job and also struggling myself. So I was in therapy like twice a week because that's like what I needed. And then there's times where I've like not gone at all. So kind of it's just contingent on life phase and like what's coming up.
Do you tell your own clients to like journal or anything, or do you give them any homework to do?
Some of them, yeah, some of them I do. You know, I think one of the things I was going to say too earlier when you were talking about like advice is I think a lot of people think therapists give advice, and like usually that's not, I mean, you're inadvertently giving advice because people trust you, but I actually try to steer away from like, hey, here's what you should do, because I also feel like it kind of is like assuming that you don't know, or like you're like not intelligent enough to know, rather than, and like I have the answers and you are coming to me so I can give you all the answers for your life. And that kind of also relates to like what's the most difficult about my job is people coming in with questions that it's like, I can't answer that, right? Like, should I stay in this relationship? Should I switch jobs? Like, all I can do is like help reflect back the values that you've shared with me and say like, here's what you've told me about what you want. Does this decision feel aligned with that or not? Yeah. So I don't even remember your question, but that's what it made me think of, was just that like, yeah, it's a lot of like helping people come to their own decisions and trust themselves, because I think a lot of us learn to not trust ourselves. And it takes a lot of work to be like, oh, I can trust myself. I can trust my actions. I can trust my choices.
Do you feel like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of like you're just helping people realize stuff they already know.
Yeah, like no one knows you better than you know like yourself. You are the expert of your own experience. You've been there through all of it. Like you have the memories, you have the emotions. I was not there for those things. And so I think, yeah, a lot of it is like helping people like put things aside so they can let their core self come to the surface, or kind of like take apart the messages that other people have told them are true about themselves and figure out like what the truth about them is, stuff like that.
Could you see AI replacing your profession?
Well, I've been talking about this a lot. I mean, I think like, okay, so there's different like modalities of therapy. So CBT is a super popular one, cognitive behavioral therapy. Mm-hmm. And that's more like homework. A lot of times they'll give homework and it's a little bit more like standardized. So maybe for like stuff like that, but I also like, and maybe this, I don't know. I don't know a lot about AI. I have a hard time believing that AI could ever replace like human interaction, like in person, having an actual person there.
You'd be
That's
surprised.
What I'd like to believe.
I
know
surprised.
that's what the voice in the back of my head is saying, right?
It's getting super trippy. Like there's this.
Okay,
app
but do you think AI could replace like your partner, your fiance?
No. I hope not.
Or like romantic relationships.
There's a Black Mirror. Like, there's a Black Mirror episode on just that. Like her partner
Black
dies.
Mirror, man.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like therapy is like other relationships in your life, though. So I think if we ask that question, you'd also have to ask that of like, you know, other
all
like
friends,
would it replace friends, family, like a partner? It's different than just like a, you know, than. There's like a much more human element to it than like a medical doctor or surgeon.
Have you ever had anyone come in and they're like, I hate you, and they never see you again?
Yeah. I mean, I've had people, I don't think people are that direct.
Right.
Like, I think people probably do it in other ways. They're like, I don't vibe with this or whatever. Or like, this person's young, and in my mind, a therapist is like an old graying woman or an elderly man or whatever. Like, I think sometimes older adults maybe don't always want a younger therapist. So I've like met with people where it's just like, we're not a good fit for each other. But you also have to be like, that's not because I'm like a bad therapist, right? There's going to be, just like in life, it's not like I'm going to be everyone. I'm not going to be for everyone, or everyone's not going to be for me. But you have to really be like, okay, I'm not a bad therapist, or like I'm not a bad person. It's kind of a trip.
You don't take it personally.
Well, yeah, you have to like not take it personally, otherwise,
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, it kind of sends you on a spiral. But there are people who come in and they're like, I want to work on this thing, but also it's, sometimes hard to change some of those things, or like maybe you're not always ready to take some of the steps to change it. And I don't think that's like a bad thing. You also have to like notice, I guess you have to kind of listen to yourself and realize that like when you're ready to make changes, and like things are aligned, you will. But yeah, I feel like that's a hard one too. When people like they maybe come in with a different goal than I have.
What do you wish the world knew about autistic people that most people don't know?
I mean, I think that there's not something inherently wrong with you if you're autistic. It's not a problem that needs to be fixed. It's not something that needs to be cured. Autistic people, have a lot of unique strengths. They also have like areas that are very challenging for them, but they're not like these broken members of society that need to be like cured in some way. Like I think a lot of misconceptions of people who view autistic people as like less than or like incompetent, and autistic people are like, again, have a ton of unique strengths that other people don't have and are like very needed societally, and are like also the people who, like, when we think, I know a lot of people talk about diversity and like inclusion and like needing to have lots of different perspectives, and I think we need more of the autistic perspective in spaces because there's a lot of like unique input. So yeah, more like of an empowering stance rather than like incompetent.
Yeah. Have you seen Love on the Spectrum?
I have, yeah.
It's so good.
I think it does a good job of showing you like different, like what it can look like and how it is. Like the big thing is like it's so individual to each person.
Yeah.
Some people have spoken language, some people have a harder time with spoken language. Like it's just so different person to person. So I think it does a good job of like showing a variety of perspectives.
Yeah, I
but
forgot his name.
You liked it?
Yeah, it's awesome. Like the guy with glasses with like curly blonde hair, he's like so likable. What kind of entertainment do you consume? You go on Netflix or what kind of like you watch movies or shows or what?
Mostly, I would say mostly TV shows, and I like one of my favorite shows is Succession. Love Succession.
So good.
One of my favorite shows of all time. I like my favorite episode. This is like gonna be stereotypical therapist of me, but is when they bring in the family therapist. That's like one of my favorite episodes.
It's so funny.
Of like any TV show ever. So yeah, I think I love stuff that's like complex and makes you think. Like Black Mirror, love Black Mirror. I also like Survivor. I like discovered Survivor as an adult like 3 years ago and like watched every episode from the beginning. So like anything that kind of like makes you think. Yeah, the reality show.
I've never seen that actually.
Ever?
Is it pretty good? Yeah, never.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can send you a list of like the order you should watch the seasons in for like peak interest levels, but yeah, I didn't watch it growing up, so it was a gem.
Yeah, Tom and Greg in Succession are so funny.
Like their whole dynamic.
Yeah.
Well, and my favorite character is
like when he's talking
Roman.
about Roman too.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you gonna say when he's talking about what?
When Tom's like telling Greg about Nero and like I would castrate you and marry you in a second. Like it's like such a weird relationship they have.
Yes, it is.
He's like a bully, but also like they're
like
kind
in
of
a
buddies.
Toxic relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Greg's evolution is like one of my favorites. Like starting from like, the beginning where he's like throwing up and getting high and throwing up in the mascot costume to the end. Like what an arc.
Yeah. He's there was like talk in the forums on Reddit like when the show hadn't ended yet that like the people were theorizing that he might end up as the CEO at the end. which would have been a little too ridiculous, you know.
You know what's funny? This is like something that I was thinking about as I was coming on here today, and I feel like this like kind of fits in here. Like I was saying, my favorite character is Roman, right? I feel like what I like about him is like how uncomfortable he makes people, or like the audience, like the kinds of comments that he makes. Like to me, that is like my peak level of humor. And I don't know if that's it for you or not, but I've like seen some of your videos, and it feels like for me that's part of what I enjoy about it, is like that I don't know, for me, it's like I'm in the seat of control now, because if you're uncomfortable, then like you're not like paying attention to me or whatever, and I've psychoanalyzed it a lot. But I find like for me, the things that are funny, I'm just like constantly like, how can I troll people? Like all the time. And it like never shuts off. And my friends are always like, oh, you're so funny. And I'm like, really? I'm just like, I don't know when I'm being funny. I'm just like constantly trying to figure out how I can like game the system of like social stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's like super insecure, Roman. Like,
yeah.
And people were theorizing like he had like a really dark childhood. Like there's all these hints that he was abused, like bad, like getting like locked in the cage and being fed dog food or something. I mean, all these,
and they were like all laughing about it.
Yeah.
And
he's like, it was actually really traumatic, and
no
one's listening to him.
And they're like, that didn't happen.
Right.
Yeah. I think it speaks to so much though to like family dynamics. Like I think everyone can relate to like a character in it or a piece of it, where you have stories that you're like, you guys remember this, and everyone's like, that didn't happen, or wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah. People downplay a lot of stuff. You need to break a few Gregs to make a Tomlet or something like that. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
Oh, God.
I feel like it's funny hearing the things that you remember versus the things that like stick out to me too. I always like appreciate that.
Well, at first you would think like, oh, a spin-off show with just them two would be good, but it might be like too much of something good, like they kind of work as like a dessert to the show,
I think so. And I think sometimes like leaving a thing as it is too, right? Like we have like everything is like, because we like to consume things and like have instant gratification, it's like, oh, you liked that thing, let's just make another and let's try to recreate it. And I think I like that it's like it had its time and that's it, and that's the only iteration of it, and you just get a little bit of their dynamic.
Right. Yeah. And at like the very end, they're like they're like still, well, I don't want to give it away, actually, never mind.
Yeah, just spoil it for everyone.
Yeah. Check out Succession on HBO.
Yeah, sponsored by Succession.
Yeah, a year after the show's ended. I think I've covered everything. Do you plan on having a family someday?
Yeah, I think I would like to have kids, and I'm really curious if like is like everything I know about kids, because I work with parents and kids, is that like all just going to get thrown out the window? Or, like I guess I wonder like what it's going to feel like, how difficult it's going to be, and all of that, because there's like a lot of knowledge I have in my head about parenting and kids. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like, it reminds me of Good Will Hunting, when he's like, I can't tell you you think I know anything about being an orphan because I read Oliver Twist. It's just like.
Yeah, that same kind of vibe.
Right. Yeah, like you have to live it to understand it.
Yeah, and I think too, like signing on to be a parent is like, you're going to mess up in some way. It's like just like what degree are you going to have accountability for that or not, or like try to repair that or not. But like it's pretty much guaranteed you're going to do something to like mess up your child, or you're going to like, make a decision at some time that's hurtful for them. Like you can't, it's like inevitable. Yeah. It doesn't, but like the accountability, being able to like repair, I feel like that makes all the difference, because that's all, like when I work with adults, that's all they wanted from their parents was to like acknowledge that it happened and like understand it.
Right.
Yeah. Do you think you'll have kids someday, or do you want to?
Yeah. We'll probably have like a couple kids at least.
Would you ever like include them in your YouTubing, your like content, or no?
Probably not. I mean, I don't know. It just gets messy when you like, there's so many problems with like family blog channels and stuff. And I don't know. I don't want to, I don't like to force people to be on camera or anything like that too. So
Yeah, so like your videos, you always are like asking people, and like they are like,
Well, yeah, the first few years I was doing pranks, and then I would ask if it was okay,
yeah,
but
ask for
it's still,
forgiveness.
yeah, but it's like I grew out of that, and now it's so cringe for me to film people if they don't know, you know.
Yeah. Is it hard going back and watching some of your old stuff? Like, or do you not just not
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that?
I mean, sometimes, I mean, I don't, yeah, I haven't watched my old stuff in years, but yeah, definitely you can. I look back and it's like, wow, what was I thinking? So,
Yeah, because I think about myself 10 years ago and I'm like, thank God I didn't have a platform, right? Like, that's hard to like have to, I don't know. Yeah,
yeah,
I think that would just be really difficult.
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, internet's forever. You got to be
Yeah,
careful.
I know. That's why I was like, do I really want to talk with you today or not? You know?
Well, yeah, you mentioned you've done podcasts before.
Yeah, I've been on a couple other podcasts, like mental health podcasts talking about autism, neurodiversity, all that good stuff.
Cool.
So yeah, I enjoy talking with people. I'm not intimidated really by it. I think I mentioned like I taught college classes for a while, and I feel like the jumping into the deep end version of it, or the like really getting desensitized. I taught like an 8 a.m. Friday class, and it was just like dead, like the worst, you know, like
Yeah.
no one's paying attention, no, like no one's home, no lights on, like, and I feel like I found ways to make it fun, and by the end, people were like, I never thought I'd look forward to an 8 a.m. class, or like this ended up being one of my favorite, and it was
Nice.
encouraging because I feel like I saw it as a challenge. I was like, I'm not going to let you be bored in this class. So I feel like that kind of prepared me to do some of the other stuff, because I was like, oh, if I can do that, then I can deal with whatever.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Is there anything you want to shout out or anything? Like, do you have a website or?
Yeah, I have a website, so people can find me there. It's just my first name, my last name at gmail.com. So, or at wait. Okay, let me try that again.
Okay, deep breath.
It's like you're the therapist. Okay, so I do have a website. It's just my first name, last name.com. So MadySnyder.com. People can find me there, and they'll find links to all my other stuff if they want to follow me on Instagram or keep up with stuff. They can find me on there.
Awesome. Yeah, check out Maddie's stuff in the description. Let us know what you think about all this. You know, comment, like for the algorithm. And thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.